You know what destroys more relationships than anything else? Ego. Two people who love each other, standing in silence, letting pride speak louder than the heart. You've been there, haven't you? That moment when you know you're wrong but refuse to admit it. That moment when the words, "I'm sorry," feel heavier than stone. But here's the truth. Saying sorry doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. It makes you human. It makes you someone who values love more than ego. Because the strongest men are not the ones who never fall. The strongest men are the ones who are willing to bend for the sake of love. A relationship isn't destroyed by one mistake. It's destroyed by the walls of silence we build afterward. Every "I'm right" and "you're wrong" pushes two hearts further apart. But a simple apology can pull them back together. When you apologize, you're not admitting defeat. You're telling your partner, "You matter more than my pride." And that one act can change everything. There's a moment in every relationship where silence grows heavier than words, where the air between two people feels colder than winter. That moment when you both know something is wrong, but neither wants to speak first. You replay the argument in your head, defending your side, convincing yourself you were right. And yet, deep down, your heart whispers something different. Just say sorry. Apologies have a power that arguments can never match. Arguments seek to win. Apologies seek to heal. While arguments push two hearts apart, apologies pull them closer. When you choose to apologize, you're choosing love over ego, connection over distance, and peace over pride. You're saying, "I value you more than I value being right." But here's the thing. Apologizing isn't easy. It takes courage to put your pride aside. It takes strength to admit you were wrong or that your words caused pain. Many people confuse apology with weakness, but it's the opposite. Only the strongest souls can bow their heads and open their hearts at the same time. Apologizing doesn't reduce your worth, it reveals your depth. Think about the last time someone truly apologized to you. Sincerely, without excuses, without shifting blame. Do you remember how it felt? The weight in your chest eased, the anger softened, the walls began to crumble. That's what an apology does. It doesn't erase the past, but it transforms the present. Arguments, on the other hand, create scars. You might win the fight, but you lose the closeness. Words said in anger can't be taken back. Silence filled with resentment slowly becomes distance. The longer you let pride stand in the way, the more the relationship suffers. An apology doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need paragraphs or justifications. Sometimes, the simplest words carry the deepest meaning. "I hurt you. I'm sorry." That sentence alone has the power to rebuild trust, restore love, and heal wounds that arguments only deepen. When you apologize, you're showing your partner that their feelings matter. You're validating their pain. You're proving that you care enough about the relationship to put your ego aside. In a world where everyone wants to be right, being willing to apologize sets you apart. Because in the end, arguments may win battles, but apologies win hearts. Arguments fuel division, but apologies nurture connection. Arguments defend pride, but apologies protect love. There's a quiet war happening inside every relationship, a war between two invisible forces, love and ego. Love whispers, "Choose us." Ego screams, "Choose me." And every time ego wins, love loses a little piece of itself. Ego wants control. Ego wants to be right. Ego wants to win every argument, no matter the cost. But love doesn't care about winning. Love cares about understanding. Love cares about connection. Love isn't about proving a point. It's about protecting the bond. Yet so many relationships break, not because two people stop loving each other, but because their egos get louder than their hearts. They stop listening. They stop softening. They stop choosing each other. Pride builds walls where love once built bridges. Silence replaces honesty. Resentment replaces compassion. And slowly, two people who once promised to be everything for each other become strangers sharing the same space. But here's the truth. Love thrives when ego dies. It's only when you put your pride aside that you can truly see your partner, their pain, their fears, their longing to be understood. Ego blinds you to their humanity. Love opens your eyes. Think about the last argument you had with someone you love. How many times did you defend your side, interrupt their words, or rehearse your response while they were still speaking? That's ego, always preparing to fight, never pausing to listen. But when you choose love over ego, something shifts. You stop fighting against each other and start fighting for each other. You stop trying to win and start trying to understand. Love grows when you apologize first, even when you weren't entirely wrong. It grows when you choose patience over anger, compassion over judgment, and understanding over assumptions. It grows in the quiet moments. When you listen without preparing a defense, when you hold your partner instead of blaming them, when you choose kindness over being right. Ego says, "I deserve better." Love asks, "How can we be better?" Ego fuels distance. Love builds intimacy. Ego clings to resentment. Love forgives. Ego seeks power. Love seeks partnership. When two people let go of ego, they create space for vulnerability. And vulnerability is where love breathes. It's where walls fall, where trust deepens, and where souls finally meet without the masks pride forces us to wear. True intimacy isn't built on perfection. It's built on the courage to show your flaws and accept someone else's. In the end, love doesn't demand grand gestures. It doesn't ask for perfection or constant agreement. Love simply asks for humility, the willingness to admit when you're wrong, to forgive when you're hurt, and to choose the relationship over your need to be right. Because where ego thrives, love suffocates. But where ego dies, love grows wild, free, and unbreakable. There's a moment we've all experienced. The silence after an argument, the tension in the air, the unspoken words trapped in your throat. Your heart races. Your mind rewinds every detail, every sentence, every tone. And yet, even when you know you were wrong, something inside you refuses to speak the two simplest words. "I'm sorry." Why? Because ego whispers, if you apologize, you lose. Because pride says they should apologize first. Because fear asks, what if saying sorry makes me look weak? But here's the truth. Apologizing doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger than most people will ever be. It takes strength to look beyond your pride and see the pain in someone else's eyes. It takes courage to admit you were wrong when every part of you wants to defend your side. It takes maturity to put the relationship above your ego, to choose connection over control, to value peace over being right. People confuse apologies with surrender. They think saying, "I'm sorry," means giving up your dignity. But in reality, it's the opposite. An apology doesn't diminish you. It elevates you. It shows that your heart is bigger than your ego, that your love is greater than your pride, and that you value the bond more than the battle. Think about it. Some of the deepest wounds in relationships aren't caused by mistakes themselves, but by the silence that follows. People can forgive imperfection. What they struggle to forgive is indifference. When you refuse to apologize, you're not protecting yourself, you're protecting your pride at the cost of connection. And pride wins arguments but loses relationships. Apologizing, on the other hand, heals wounds faster than time ever could. It tells the other person, "I see your pain, and it matters to me." It bridges distance, softens hearts, and rebuilds trust where silence built walls. That's not weakness. That's power. Saying sorry doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't make you less. It makes you human. It reminds both of you that the relationship is worth fighting for. It reminds you that compassion matters more than competition, that understanding matters more than dominance, and that love matters more than ego. There's incredible strength in vulnerability. And apologies are vulnerability in action. You're exposing yourself. You're admitting imperfection. You're allowing someone to see your flaws without hiding behind your defenses. That takes more courage than standing firm in your pride ever will. Think about the strongest people you know. They're not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who fall, own it, and rise again. Strength isn't in avoiding mistakes, it's in repairing the damage they cause. Saying sorry also teaches you emotional maturity. It reminds you that relationships aren't about keeping score. They're about growth, understanding, and balance. You learn to listen without defending. You learn to care without conditions. You learn that love isn't about winning, it's about building. And here's the part most people don't realize. Apologies don't just heal the other person, they heal you. Carrying guilt weighs you down. It keeps you awake at night, replaying what you could have done differently. But when you apologize, you release that weight. You free yourself from the endless loop of regret and resentment. An apology doesn't erase the past, but it opens the door to a better future. It creates space for conversations instead of conflicts. It builds a foundation where trust can grow again. And most importantly, it proves that your love, your friendship, or your connection is stronger than any single mistake. Because in the end, strength isn't measured by how stubborn you are. It's measured by how much you're willing to soften. It's measured by how deeply you can care, how quickly you can forgive, and how bravely you can admit when you're wrong. Saying sorry isn't weakness, it's growth. It's wisdom. It's choosing love over ego, peace over pride, and connection over control. It's proof that your heart is stronger than your fears and that your relationships matter more than your need to be right. There comes a moment in every relationship when love is tested, a word said in anger, a promise broken, a silence that cuts deeper than any argument ever could. Two people who once laughed together now sit on opposite sides of the same room, staring at the same floor, thinking the same thought. How did we get here? And in that moment, there's a choice to hold on or to let go, to cling to the pain or to open the door to healing. That door has a name: forgiveness. Forgiveness is not easy. It's not automatic. It's not instant. It's not pretending the hurt never happened or sweeping pain under the rug. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to remember without resentment. It means saying, yes, you hurt me, but I choose us over this moment. I choose love over anger. In every happy relationship, there are mistakes. There are misunderstandings. There are clashes of personalities, priorities, and expectations. No matter how deeply two people love each other, there will always be differences. But what separates relationships that break from those that last isn't perfection. It's forgiveness. When you forgive, you're not erasing the past. You're releasing its power over your future. You're refusing to let one argument define the entire relationship. You're saying, this matters more than my pride. We matter more than my pain. That's not weakness. That's strength in its purest form. The happiest couples aren't the ones who never fight. They're the ones who fight for each other, even after the fights. They know disagreements are inevitable, but disconnection is a choice. They refuse to let ego win over empathy. Think about it. Every argument carries two battles, one between you and the other person, and another inside yourself. One voice screams, they should apologize first. Another whispers, don't let this destroy what you've built. Forgiveness happens when you listen to the second voice, when you choose the relationship over the need to be right. And it's not just about the other person. Forgiveness heals you. Holding on to anger is like carrying fire in your hands. You think it's hurting them, but it's burning you. Resentment builds walls where there should be bridges. It poisons laughter, drains intimacy, and turns love into survival. But when you forgive, you put the fire down. You allow space for connection to breathe again. Forgiveness doesn't mean tolerating repeated disrespect. It doesn't mean staying silent when boundaries are crossed. True forgiveness thrives alongside accountability. It's not about excusing harmful behavior. It's about freeing yourself from being chained to it. You can forgive someone and still expect them to change. You can forgive and still protect your heart. In love, forgiveness is an act of courage. It takes strength to reopen your heart when it's been wounded. It takes vulnerability to say, I trust you enough to try again. It's risky. It's scary. But without risk, there's no real connection. Without vulnerability, there's no intimacy. And without forgiveness, there's no lasting love. When couples learn the art of forgiveness, they learn the art of growth. They stop treating mistakes as endings and start seeing them as lessons. They learn to talk openly instead of holding grudges in silence. They learn to apologize without hesitation and forgive without keeping score. Because scorekeeping kills relationships. If every mistake becomes a weapon for the next argument, love begins to shrink. Happiness fades when the past is constantly used as ammunition. But forgiveness resets the scoreboard. It says, I won't punish you forever for a moment you regret. I won't let yesterday destroy today. Happy relationships are built by two imperfect people who choose each other over and over, despite the flaws, despite the mistakes, despite the hurt. They understand that love isn't about never falling. It's about falling, forgiving, and rising together. And forgiveness doesn't only apply to the big betrayals. It lives in the small, quiet moments too. Forgiving someone for being late, for forgetting something important, for snapping after a stressful day. Those little acts of grace are the threads that hold relationships together. One thread may not seem like much, but over time, they weave unshakable bonds. The truth is, love without forgiveness is fragile. It breaks under the weight of unspoken resentments and unresolved conflicts. But love with forgiveness is resilient. It bends without breaking. It survives storms. It grows stronger through struggle. Forgiveness is also an act of empathy. It requires you to see the human behind the hurt, to remember that the person you love isn't perfect, just like you aren't. It asks you to step into their shoes, to understand their fears, their flaws, their struggles. It reminds you that sometimes people hurt us not because they don't care, but because they're carrying pain of their own. It's easy to love someone's best days. True love shows up on their worst days. It chooses patience when frustration rises. It chooses compassion when anger takes over. It chooses forgiveness when walking away feels easier. Relationships thrive when forgiveness becomes a habit, not an exception. It builds safety, the kind where both people know they can be honest, make mistakes, and still be loved. It deepens trust because you stop fearing that one wrong move will end everything. It creates a space where love can breathe, where connection can heal, and where happiness can grow. Because the happiest relationships aren't the ones without pain. They're the ones where love is bigger than pain. They're the ones where two people decide, we are more important than this moment. Our bond matters more than this battle. Our love is worth forgiving for. There's a moment in every man's life when he stands at a crossroads. A quiet, invisible moment that decides the fate of his relationships, his happiness, and sometimes even his identity. In one direction lies pride, in the other lies love, and far too often men are taught to choose pride. From a young age, society whispers in a boy's ear, be strong. But strength is rarely defined. They're told, don't cry, don't break, don't bend. They're taught that emotions are weakness, that vulnerability is dangerous, that apologizing makes you small. And so, they grow into men who armor themselves with silence, stubbornness, and unspoken pain. But here's the truth no one talks about. Real strength doesn't live in pride. It lives in love. It takes courage to put your ego aside. It takes resilience to say, I was wrong. It takes wisdom to realize that proving you're right isn't worth losing someone who makes your world brighter. That's not weakness. That's emotional power. And that's real masculinity. Pride tells you to stay quiet when you should speak. Love asks you to open up when it hurts. Pride tells you to walk away first so you won't be the one left behind. Love says, stay. Fight for this. It matters. There's nothing masculine about shutting down. There's nothing powerful about refusing to listen. There's nothing heroic about choosing distance over understanding. True masculinity shows up in the moments when your ego screams, but your heart whispers louder. It's in the way you choose connection over control. It's in the way you hold your partner's pain without dismissing it. It's in the apology that comes before the resentment grows too deep to heal. Because here's the thing, relationships are not competitions. There are no trophies for winning. An argument if the cost is your partner's trust. There's no victory in holding on to your pride when it pushes the person you love further away. Every fight gives you two choices. You can choose to defend yourself, or you can choose to protect the bond. The happiest relationships are built by people who choose the bond. But for many men, pride feels safer than vulnerability. Saying, "I'm sorry," feels like surrender. Admitting fault feels like losing. And yet the irony is this: when you choose pride, you lose far more than you ever protect. You lose closeness. You lose trust. You lose the soft, unspoken comfort of knowing you can be fully yourself with someone. Love requires letting go of the idea that strength means never bending. In reality, strength is knowing when to bend without breaking. It's understanding that lowering your walls doesn't make you smaller. It makes your love bigger. Real masculinity doesn't come from dominance. It comes from empathy. It's not about who talks louder. It's about who listens deeper. It's not about always being right. It's about being willing to understand. It's not about holding power over someone. It's about holding space for them. Think about the relationships you admire. The couples who seem unshakable. The fathers who raise emotionally secure children. The men who inspire others through their presence. What sets them apart isn't control, ego, or stubbornness. It's their capacity to lead with compassion, to love openly, and to apologize when they're wrong. Choosing love over pride doesn't erase masculinity. It redefines it. It expands it. It transforms it into something deeper and more authentic. Masculinity at its highest form isn't about building walls. It's about building bridges. It's about showing up when it's hard. It's about staying soft when the world tells you to harden. It's about choosing peace over power, healing over hurting, and closeness over control. Some men confuse pride with respect. They think, if I admit I'm wrong, she'll think less of me. But the opposite is true. Nothing earns respect faster than accountability. Nothing strengthens trust like honesty. When you choose love over pride, you show your partner that your relationship matters more than your ego. And that is the deepest form of respect there is. The problem is, many of us are carrying silent wounds, childhood lessons that taught us to suppress emotions, past relationships where vulnerability was punished, environments where real men were measured by dominance instead of compassion. But healing begins When you challenge those patterns, when you decide that masculinity doesn't have to mean emotional distance. Love asks something radical of men: to risk being seen fully, to stand unarmored, to admit imperfection without shame, to say, "I love you enough to choose us over me." And this doesn't just transform romantic relationships. It changes everything. Friendships deepen, families heal. Fathers raise sons who know it's okay to cry, okay to apologize, okay to lead with kindness instead of fear. Choosing love over pride teaches men to value connection over control. It shows that real confidence doesn't come from never being wrong. It comes from knowing you're strong enough to own your mistakes. It creates safety in relationships where both partners can speak, be heard, and be held without fear of rejection. Every time you choose pride, you build distance. Every time you choose love, you build trust. Over time, that trust becomes the foundation of something unshakable. A bond where neither person feels the need to perform, to defend, or to hide. Masculinity without love is fragile. It depends on dominance, on proving, on hiding weakness. But masculinity rooted in love is unshakable. It doesn't fear being wrong. It doesn't fear being soft. It knows that strength isn't in standing taller than others, but in standing closer to them. There's nothing braver than lowering your guard to protect your connection. There's nothing more powerful than saying, "I choose you over my ego." There's nothing more masculine than loving fiercely, forgiving freely, and showing up fully, even when it scares you. Because real masculinity isn't measured by how much you control. It's measured by how deeply you care, how openly you love, and how courageously you choose the people who matter most over the pride that tempts you to push them away.